Kara, you
All
want to?
right. Yeah, I can jump in. Welcome everyone to the Shinjiro sessions presented by 2CG Collective. Today's featured guest, we've got the great Sam Kirk. Sam is a multidisciplinary artist. She explores cultural and a lot of identity politics. She's been working in advertising at the beginning of her career, and that has really shaped her work and art and business now. Her work focuses on a variety of intersections, which encompass a call to celebrate differences and enact change. Definitely, people in Chicago know and love Sam. She has a fascination with the nuances of the human experience, and her work is an ongoing narrative about how life's journey impacts all of our identities. Her personal experience as a queer, biracial woman has influenced her decisions throughout her practice. In her mural work, which you have definitely seen around the city if you're local to Chicago, she intentionally uses the public space to spark some dialogue around topics of equality and visibility for marginalized communities. So without further ado, Sam, let's
Thank
hear
you,
it.
Kara.
Let's hear it. Take it away.
Thanks for that introduction. I always appreciate introductions so that I don't have to do them. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
All right, cool. So as Kara mentioned, I am Sam Kirk. I am a local Chicago-based artist, multidisciplinary artist. And to kick it off, I just want to share kind of how my practice works. I operate in many lanes, which I enjoy as an artist. And a couple of the lanes that are key in my practice are fine art. The core of my work and my business is fine art. And my art really began with this painting on canvas and illustrations. So I do show quite a bit of my work in galleries and museums. And the way that I came about going into public art was really because I felt like the spaces that are more like institutions or high art arenas weren't necessarily welcoming to everybody. A lot of the people in the community felt like they were uninviting or spaces that were intimidating. And so I started to get more involved in the public space and using public art as a way to not only put this work out into different neighborhoods to celebrate, create representation and visibility, but really to help bring the community and people into my practice. A lot of my work is heavy in storytelling and narratives. And I feel like in order to continue to develop work that has these, different layers and different stories from different cultures and communities, I kind of have to be involved in the public space. Painting murals outside almost in a way brings the community into my studio. And I love that. Like I learn something every time I'm out painting. And at some points it changes the piece like right when I'm on site, but without a doubt, it definitely informs the work as I continue to develop it. Definitely work still in kind of the advertising realm a little bit. So merchandise and, commercial designs, working with different brands. And I think, one of the things I love the most about this area is I loved advertising when I worked in advertising. I love the storytelling angle of it for sure. Obviously that's still seen in my work, but also just all of the different ways we were trying to figure out like how to communicate with people. And so this is a really fun part of my practice that I truly enjoy because I get to bring my work to life with these different brands and figure out fun ways to put things together. This is a plug. The Effin bottle is out right now.
Love that bottle. Love it, love it, love it.
Thank you. It's a national release, so Freddie, wherever you're going, is probably there. But also, one of the things I love about the work that I create in my practice that I wasn't always able to figure out how to do when I worked in advertising was almost every corporate project that I work on has a component that ties into the community. So for example, the FN campaign, Every Bottle Sold, supports allies in arts, which helps support creatives of color within the LGBTQ community. Obviously more apparel. This is a Cubs collection that will be launching tomorrow. So if you're on mine, you'll see all kinds of things about that. But then also I do a lot in digital illustration. So some digital illustration is more like poster formats for different festivals and different, events that are going on for nonprofits mostly. But also I'm now starting to go into a whole new lane in my practice, and the image on the right, The Meaning of Pride, is the cover for a new children's book that will be launching in April 2022. And that'll be a global launch as well with publisher HarperCollins. So one of the things that I personally enjoy about working in many lanes, and I think is kind of something that's necessary for me as an artist, is my brain just doesn't work in one medium. Like, as much as I could try to paint all of these ideas on a public wall or a canvas, I need to figure out a way for the idea to exist in another way where people can interact with it. And I really love that my advertising experience, when I worked in advertising, I worked in experiential and events, often comes to life in my business and my art practice today. So this is an event for South by Southwest where this painting up at the top that I painted was used to wrap the entire booth. And then it was also used in an outdoor venue, window clings, a Twitter vending machine, and then ultimately Xfinity picked it up and used it when Chicago decided to launch the bag tax. And for myself as an artist, I know that that's one of the unique things that I kind of have in my back pocket in comparison to a lot of my peers that are also artists. The experience that I have in advertising has definitely helped me in understanding the many ways that I could work with brands and utilize one design, one piece of artwork to turn into other things. In some cases, it's a poster that turns into a limited edition of beer cans. Sometimes it's a poster that turns into a mural, but not really a mural, right? So this is a program where I worked with a digital technology company on the Women's March, and basically they made it seem like there were these murals all over the city through a digital app, and people were sharing them online, and it just looked like my work was plastered all over LA, even though it wasn't really painted anywhere. So I really enjoy exploring the many different ways that I can utilize the different mediums in my work. And then there's the obvious, right? Digital illustration becomes a mural. But it all comes from the fine art part of it. I'm fascinated with stories, and as a woman who grew up on the south side of Chicago, I'm biracial, I had to kind of navigate my identity in a different way, also being queer. I grew up in the 80s, so dealing with Chicago segregation was definitely a little bit challenging. And the way that I learned about my culture and also other cultures was mostly through art, through music, through visual art, and then also exploring neighborhoods, going to events, going to festivals. So when I create my work, what I'm really trying to do is showcase what that experience was like and what it felt like. So in these pieces, the image on the right, like, what is the feeling that I got feeling that I get when I walk through Humboldt Park and I see a lot of the older men playing dominoes and hear the music, pouring out of the windows. In my work, I'm really trying to like create this movement and create these stories so that when people see them, they kind of get a glimpse of the experience that I had and what I was feeling. In public art, this is a recent one you guys might know about a little bit. In public art, that's sometimes a challenge when working with brands. Sometimes I have the opportunity to create work that is a full-on expression exactly the way I would want it to be. And this is kind of a representation of that. Throughout my practice, I've been self-employed as a full-time artist for 11 years now. I've been trying almost that entire time, trying to figure out, like, how do I get more representation for the LGBTQ community out there, specifically for LGBTQ members of color. And for a long time, people I felt were scared. I got a lot of rejection, a lot of no's, we're not ready. But now people are ready for it. And even though with this concept, there were some conversations where I had to like push back on it. This is still the first mural of its kind where I felt like I was really able to celebrate our community in the way that they represent themselves and express themselves fully. And as someone who worked in advertising and also runs a business now, I particularly love working with brands that allow me to do that. Brands that aren't asking me to, put their logo all over the piece or incorporate their logo into the work. I understand why it's necessary sometimes, but I also feel like sometimes it can water down the message, or it can change how people receive the artwork. When people see this piece now, I feel like I get a genuine response. I feel like the connection is a little bit more real than it would have been if I had a logo on any of the t-shirts or within the artwork somewhere. A lot of times people perceive that as, just another form of advertising, which is a popular thing now. This is another example of that. And another way that I really love that I've been able to tie in social justice issues and community issues within public art, and then also still work with a brand. So this mural was for a homeless nonprofit, a nonprofit that helps homeless residents in Chicago. And to develop the content, I worked with those residents directly. So the work specifically represents their story and everything that they shared with me. Xfinity sponsored this completely. And once again, their logo is nowhere to be seen on the building. But we figured out, like, okay, how do they contribute, or what's something that they can use as a takeaway? And we developed another version of the tote bag, since they were so well received the first time that we did it. This one is a piece that I recently did for F and Vodka. Their logo's here, but it's teeny tiny over in the right corner. And same thing, and particularly with this, right? Like, I feel like as an artist who's been working in the public space for a while and listening to people within community and learning how they respond to the work, I've started to realize where, certain topics or certain content will immediately be ignored or become not less important, but less, I guess, celebrated if I were to incorporate a logo into it. And for this piece in particular, this is in Pilsen on 18th and Ashland. Chicago Southside doesn't really have any LGBTQ, like obvious LGBTQ public artwork. And the response that I received was tremendous. It was amazing. Like, I got so many, wonderful responses in my inbox, and also heartfelt and very vulnerable responses in my inbox. And if I put a logo, across the top, I wonder if I would get that same response. So one of the things that I've really enjoyed in my work is being able to work with these clients and help them to understand why the work should just be the work. And if you're going to support it, you should support it. And we can support it in other ways, like a bottle that has the logo included on it. But if we're going to do things in the community, we should, let that artwork be within the community and let it live for the purpose it's supposed to live for, which for me is to generate dialogue and create representation and visibility and celebration. Then, of course, there's, murals and projects where the logo's all over the place, right? This is in New York City, also went up this month. But I didn't mind this so much because the message was very intentional. Queer to Stay is a program, it's an initiative that's helping to support LGBTQ businesses in New York City survive the pandemic. So it's important that people look up Queer to Stay and try to figure out what it is. It's important that they know about it, because when they Google it, they'll find out, okay, Showtime has a whole series that's kind of sharing the story behind these businesses. And that's important too, right? Like, for people beyond our community, beyond the LGBTQ community, to understand, what does it take to run an LGBTQ business? What are some of the hurdles? What are some of the things that you're dealing with? So in developing my work, I've just been really selective. And I always make sure that I'm sitting down at the table with the client and trying to understand, what are they trying to do? Why do they want to create the work? Why did they choose me? And then what are some ways that we can work together to make sure that this work, one, for me personally, first and foremost, is something that'll fit in my portfolio that I feel proud of. But two, for the people that are viewing it, is something that they can actually connect with. I think if I look at my advertising background and then my current position as a business owner, those are two things that I always have to consider. I've also been super fortunate to be able to do some amazing projects that have nothing to do with advertising at all, but just complete celebration. Worked with the city of New York to celebrate Stonewall, the 50th anniversary of Stonewall and World Pride, the first time World Pride came to the United States, with a permanent mural, which is down here at the bottom, that's in the Lower East Side. And then also a full block wrap of the main square in Times Square for the closing ceremony of World Pride. And this was a tremendous piece of work for me. Not just like, I think every artist dreams of like having to work in Times Square. That's the goal a lot of times. But also just to see the reactions of people, to see the response of people when they saw the work. It was one of the first times that I was able to put up work that showed someone like a woman in a hijab that is within rainbow colors, or an Asian person that is transgender. And being able to see the response to that in Times Square when there's millions of people walking past was unbelievable. There's definitely a lot of negative responses, but there's also a lot of positive responses, some confusion. But for me, that's the point of public artwork, and to have it up in this space was tremendous for me, for my career, and then also as a learning experience personally. I've also done some other work with nonprofits like the National Domestic Workers Alliance. And I think because I've spent so much time in figuring out, how do I use the public space to tell stories, and how do I use art to shed light on what people's journeys are in life, and how do we contribute to each other in different ways, I've been asked to create a good amount of this work. This piece features 4 actual workers here in Chicago, and there was a really beautiful video put together with it as well that shares their stories and kind of gives a little bit more detail on what inspired the work for me. But it's amazing to me because this was done last year, but in a couple of weeks they're going to be using it for a press conference. It's already been used on different print items to help push more awareness around why domestic workers need the same rights as everybody else does if they worked in a corporate job, or if they work in a like average household, but versus working in a corporate office. So it's just amazing to me how visual art pieces like this are really used to help push awareness and drive awareness and bring up topics that really need to be discussed. And then this piece I wanted to chat a little bit about and I wanted to talk about my team. I was trying to find pictures of us all together, and we have none. But I wanted to talk about this piece and talk about my team because as a business owner, one of the biggest things that are important to me is who I work with and who I employ. My team is 90% women, mostly women of color. And that's extremely important to me because the industry that I work in is male dominated. But also because there's a lot of opportunities that arise, like this one in Casablanca, Morocco, where women aren't seen doing this kind of work. This was a piece that we did in 2018. My wife and I completed this together, and it's illegal to be queer there. So we essentially had to go back into the closet while we were there. But more than anything, I think the experience was amazing because we had the opportunity to interact with all of these women and young girls who were mesmerized and amazed by the work that we were doing. To see 2 young women operating this huge scissor lift and doing something that they only saw men do just had them asking us all kinds of questions and allowed us to build, you know, a relationship with them that then turned into like volunteer dance classes and volunteer mural classes at a different community center. So I think the content of my work is important, but also the process of developing it and who I choose to work with is extremely important as well. So often when we're out on the street, my team will be asked like, oh, when's the artist coming? A lot of people still assume that women don't paint murals, or there's a man that's usually leading us all. And that's one of the things that is key to my business, and making sure that the content is shifting conversations, but also the process and how people see who's doing the work is also shifting that perspective in that process as well. And that's me. That's it.
Good stuff.
Thanks, Lee.
Yeah, you've been busy.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
I've been busy.
I
Yeah.
didn't. Where Sam, it's Kara. For that Sister Cities mural, is that anywhere else, like in Chicago, or have I seen it somewhere else? I've never been to Casablanca, but it looks hella familiar. Maybe it's just like on your portfolio or something that I saw.
It's definitely on my portfolio. It's nowhere else in Chicago though. No, at least not that I know of. I don't think so. If you spot it, let me know. But no, I don't think so.
Yeah, definitely will. Yeah, I bet that was a lot of a challenge. You know, I spent some time in Marrakesh, and I know you mentioned, you know, there's definitely it's a lot more stringent as well as legalities. I know people, you can't even like stay in the same house with like another male or female of the opposite sex unless you're actually married and they actually check it.
Oh really? I didn't know
Morocco, in Marrakesh. Yeah, I took a trip there with my boyfriend at the time, and they make exceptions for American citizens. But and if you come from any primarily Arabic Muslim country, then you get checked. They check your paperwork and things to even stay in the same house in different rooms. So I can imagine that was pretty intense being there.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we were there for a month. We didn't have to be there the whole time, but we chose to be there. Whenever I create public art that's in a city outside of my own, I try to be within the space for several weeks at a time, so that before we actually paint the mural, we're spending time with community members and trying to, you know, learn more about them, learn from them. And then if the opportunity presents itself, add to the mural or change the mural based on that experience and based on the conversations that we had. But individually, personally, for the two of us, it was definitely an experience. I would do it again though. I would definitely do it all over again if I had the chance. Yeah.
The anthropologist in me loves that, you know, like really getting a sense for the community, especially in other countries, because the norms can definitely differ a lot. So it's really cool. I respect it.
Thank you.
I think those experiences are crucial to the creative process as well. You know, just getting in and mingling with the community and the people of different cultures and just kind of learning. And, you know, it's really dope. All right. Does anyone have any questions for Sam?
So there's a couple questions in the chat. Do I do personal commissioned work? Yes, I do. The other question is, what types of negative responses have you gotten, and do you ever respond? Is it mostly through social media? No, we've gotten a lot of negative responses, unfortunately. When painting murals, that's probably the most of the time when we get those responses. In Chicago in specific, there's been several issues around some of the murals that I create. And I think that comes from the city being so segregated. Like a lot of the people in different neighborhoods are very used to seeing the same thing. So when public art goes up, there's an expectation that if it's in Little Village, it's going to be completely about the Mexican culture. And my work is definitely more about unity and inclusion. Because I'm biracial, I'm more interested in seeing Chicago move away from segregation and for our neighborhoods to overlap a little bit more. And my work includes that in every single piece. So we've definitely had people come up to us and question us about like why we're not doing something that celebrates only the community that's there. And even if we point out ways that we are doing that, there's still an issue. Like a lot of times it's not good enough. But I feel like that's the point of art, you know. One of the purposes and goals is to challenge perspectives. So I'm okay with that. Aside from that, I mean, we definitely get some sexual harassment, having an all-female crew. We definitely get some commentary about like being careful or asking if we need extra assistance from a lot of men. And a couple times I've gotten some LGBT specific remarks that were negative, but most of those end up on social media. They don't usually do those directly to me, but they do end up on social media. But some people are bold and they say it to our face. So I'd rather that than social media. At least then I can have a conversation about it and talk about it. But yeah, we do, unfortunately, get some negative stuff. But for the negative stuff, we get a ton of positive stuff. You know, like we get a ton of great positive feedback and a lot of curiosity that is really satisfying to me. Those conversations are really enjoyable. And especially with the piece we just did in Pilsen on for Pride. There were so many older residents that came up to me and mentioned that like this is a way of showing that the neighborhood has evolved. And I honestly wouldn't have expected that at all. I've talked a little bit about this recently, but when I was a teenager, I was beat up in Pilsen, and I was put in the hospital for being gay. And that mural happens to be 2 blocks away from where that incident took place. So for elders to come up to me from the community and say that to me was definitely surprising, but also really touching, because it shows that, you know, all of the work, all of the things that are happening in the world and the ways that we're using art and different mediums to share our stories, whether it's like commercials or films or, you know, music, it's getting through. And people are starting to listen and pay attention. So, yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's you know, it's as an artist, I feel especially you and the stuff you do is you're a disruptor. And
Yeah.
by going into these neighborhoods and putting up those murals, you're forcing people to have those conversations, right? And people, and those are conversations that are needed, you know, and people need to kind of, you know, express their feelings. And, you know, a lot of people are just ignorant. And, you know, once they express their feelings, that creates a conversation where people can actually say, you know what, that's not really true, what you believe. And then that can kind of start to get people, you know, thinking on a different path. And just by those older people coming up to you, that's proof that it's working. So
totally. I agree completely. Yep.
Oh, Freddie's wheels up.
I was gonna say his face is still here, but I don't think he's still here. For some reason, I don't think he's still here. But I mean, you're still there.
But I put a little comment about you know, maybe good to share your experience with Guinness Lit Up.
Also, ladies and
everything you built.
we're aware that
this woman built an entire house once.
Freddie,
However,
you're messing with the pilot's machinery at this point. You're messing with the pilot's machinery at this point. I think what he was saying
Please turn off your phone.
Leave it to Freddie, right? But I heard what he was saying, and I can talk briefly about that. You know, one of the first projects that I did when I left my career in advertising was with Lee and Freddie. I worked with them to develop the Guinness Live It Up experience, and it was an amazing collaboration. Shout out to you guys. That's where I met my wife, and we're still together. But it was amazing because a lot of the things that I'm talking about now is literally what I had to do for that event. And I feel like my experience in advertising, my experience with an event like that has contributed significantly to the work that I develop today and like how I go about in creating work, because I've learned so much from those different projects. And for Guinness, basically we were in Brooklyn for almost the whole summer.
Yeah.
And I've immersed myself in the West Indian community there and try to learn as much as I could in order to collaborate with a lot of the artists that were local to the city, and we're going to be bringing the work into the space. And also to collaborate, with Lee and Freddie and the team. And it was an amazing experience to be able to figure out like how we combine these different art forms to create something that was truly authentic and unique. And the community there could come and feel like, this is us. Like this is what we're about. This is where we want to be. And we did just a phenomenal job as a team in putting that together. And it was tricky, that could be part of the reason why I continued to work in multiple mediums, because for Guinness Live It Up, I had to get super creative. I became a carpenter, fabricator, painter, like everything I could think of building with my hands became reality.
Sam was
Freddie and Lee got that effect on people.
Sam was like literally like rappelling down from the wall, putting up stuff. Like, that was some of our best work. That collaboration was one of my favorite collaborations in all the stuff that we've done. I think we just had such a great working relationship and a great vibe, and all of us were doing the deep dive in different areas into, while Sam was doing the art and cultural thing, I was deep diving into the musical experience with, all the Caribbean people. And Freddie as well, we all brought that together in that collaboration and just really made some amazing work. And, stuff that Sam did on that was like absolutely incredible. So that was one of the most fun ones we did. I want to get back to doing work like that. That was great work.
Yeah, right. For sure. And, that's why I wanted to end my, what I was presenting with on how important it is to work with specific people, because the people that you work with and collaborate with, I feel like really helps the work that you produce and the work that you put out. And collaboration isn't always easy, but I think it's key in growth and development. And yeah, that for sure was definitely a favorite. For sure.
Yeah, it was dope. It was good.
Yeah. Let me see in the chat if there's any other questions. Oh, someone else commented about the house. Let me see. Sorry, guys. I'm not the greatest at looking at chat while also talking at the same time.
Well, I got you. I have a question. I don't know if there's any others in the chat, but it's Kara again, in case I'm not lighting up. I was just wondering, you said that like the whole Times Square thing is like most people's like mecca, like, I made it from an artist perspective. So now that you already did that, what is your next goal? Like, are you, what's like your dream and something you want to achieve in your career since you've already made it so far?
Oh man, that's such a challenging question. However, I know the next thing in my practice, what I really want to do is to make the public art I'm creating more interactive and functional. So it'll require more of like a sculptural approach, but I want to make it something that people can actually interact with and figure out like, how do I bring them into the story that I'm trying to tell so that they can be within it and actually experience that. I've been dabbling with it a little bit. I think I'm almost there. So hopefully something will come out soon for that. But yeah, that's definitely the next goal on the list. But location, I just want to do more international stuff. So, as soon as this pandemic completely wraps up, I can start flying again. In 2020, I was supposed to do a little bit more of that, but it looks like maybe 2023 or something that might come, back to the option list. So, Neil, I noticed you have a question. You said when you're working on commercial projects, are you the one to suggest not branding the art, or are more companies seeking these more natural opportunities? On the same line, what do you find is the most convincing argument that non-branded content can be, as if not more valuable to the brand? It's a combination. Most times I am the one suggesting not branding the art or figuring out a different way to use branding, whether that's licensing additional products, kind of like what I did with Xfinity, or figuring out a way to create an event or an activity around the mural if it's a mural. Sometimes the brand doesn't look for it specifically, but most of the time it's me that's convincing them, or my management team that's convincing them not to do it. What do I find is the most convincing argument? Usually when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about the process of developing the work and how I go about interacting with the community. And once I share that and talk about how I think logos or putting brands on it will change the interaction, I find that people listen a little bit more. A lot of times these conversations also bring up, when we create work. One of the big things that I launched this year was the effing bottle, and that turned into a year-long campaign because of the conversation that I had about art and culture and how we celebrate different communities. A lot of brands only want to do things in June for the LGBTQ community. They only want to do things in February for Black History Month, or March for Women's Month. And as we all know, we all exist as this version and this, these people year round. So it's not to say that we should get rid of the months. I think the months are definitely important, but I think advertising campaigns can do more and can be a little bit more robust and figure out how they can extend that beyond just these designated timeframes. So the conversations are usually pretty layered, but so far they've been successful in really getting people to, just let the artwork speak for it, and then them figuring out how do they utilize press to drive awareness and make sure people knew hey, we sponsored this mural or we sponsored this project or campaign. And as an artist, I'm always willing to, answer questions or do those press interviews as part of that conversation, if that's what's going to help keep the logos off of the artwork.
Thanks. That's really great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Some of the point that you just brought up is really good, Sam, because some of the most compelling ad campaigns have been about a piece of art or an image that had no connection physically to the brand and no logos, and just getting that image out and making people feel and understand, what the feeling is coming from that image over a period of time. And then when that time period is over, then start branding, and then start basically what Effin did was great, because the art was there. People connected with the art for a period of time, and they were like, oh, that's dope art. And then they came out with the bottle, and then it was like, oh, Effin did that. That was dope.
Right.
And it gives
exactly.
you right. But then you're not saying, oh, it's just another campaign. You're seeing the art, you're connecting with it, and then you're like, oh, Effin did that. Okay, that was really cool that Effin did that. And so now you have a connection to the art, and through that you have a stronger connection to the brand if you do it that way. So that's something that we always try to push to our clients as well, to not do so much heavy branding on these incredible pieces, So yeah.
Because people ignore that now. The minute they see something with a brand, and not all the time. I think it really depends on the content of the artwork. But I do find, and this will answer a little bit of Ben's question. He's asking, how do I navigate being true to my vision while adhering to the confinements of sponsored work? It definitely impacts me in the creative process and what I'm thinking about, and it makes it harder, in my opinion, when I know that there's going to be logos included in the work. I have to really think about how am I going to create this piece that is going to reach people and try to get them to see beyond the logo. Because for me, as a creative, as an artist, whether it's a work that's a collaboration with a brand or not, all of the work that I create is important to me. All of the collaborations that I do are very specific, and there's always a goal with every single one of them, as I was mentioning. So as a creative, it's just a little bit more challenging to create the content, knowing that there's going to be logos on it. But I think as far as being true to my vision, that's just a decision as a business owner. I have very clear parameters on what I will and won't do. So if I ever get to a point where I feel like a brand is telling me I can't include something or asking me to water something down to the point where it's no longer something that I feel good with creating, then I walk away. And that comes from, I did my time in advertising. I worked in advertising for 8 years. So I dealt with that where clients would request things and then cancel them or change everything we created at the last minute. So now as a business owner myself, like I have the key, so I get to decide what I'm going to allow and what I'm not. And I think because my work is so much about a celebration of people, I have to make sure that I put those limits on what they can and cannot request and what they can change. And thankfully, I have no problem with saying no.
Yeah. And you know what, Sam, going back to actually using logos, you've actually done some really incredible work incorporating logos into your artwork as well. Like the Don Julio campaign that we did, you really took that and like really took the brand and made it your own. And so there are points and times where, it is, prudent to do that. But I think more and more as we're moving into the future, people are, I think, resonating on stuff without logos right now. So.
Totally. And I feel like that's easier to do with brands or with programs that have been around for a while, because as people, we know how they show up in our lives, right? So for Julio, there's years and years of knowledge on that brand, aside from what the client sent us for, what they wanted us to know for their key messaging and everything, right? Like I know personally how my people, my family, my friends use that in their household, and like how that brand shows up in our lives just because, it's something that is used for celebration or different things. So I think that makes it a lot easier when there's some history that can be tied to brands that we use every day. But then when it's something new, like the Showtime piece that I shared, and it's this new show called Queer to Stay, I have to dig a little bit more and think about, who are the people's stories that they're sharing and how am I going to represent them, so that this logo, isn't the only thing that people see. And that's something I'm curious about, like I wish I was in New York and I could sit on the corner and just see what people do. That's what I do sometimes. Like I just sit there and like eavesdrop or stalk or whatever you want to call it and see, how do people react to the work? And then I learn from that. And then it helps me to figure out, what to change or what to keep moving forward.
Nice. Is that still up in Times Square now?
Yeah, that's still up in Times Square right now. That just went up this month.
Awesome. I'll be in New York, so I'll make sure to go see it.
Okay. It's on Grand and Thompson.
Okay.
In Soho.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
I'll be there Thursday, so I'll go check it out.
Nice.
Cool. Anybody else with any more questions for Sam?
Okay, I'll ask another question.
Yeah.
So I know you guys are tired of hearing my voice. This seems like a very surface level question, but maybe it's deeper as an artist. What is your favorite color?
Oh, as a person, I love black. Like you rarely see me in color, but as an artist, I love teal. I paint that. I know almost everything. Teal turquoise kind of color that shows up a lot in my work. I don't think I own a single item with that color though in my wardrobe or house. But in my murals and artwork, that's like one of my go-to colors for sure.
What's funny is I think I wear black all the time too, but I think I have one thing in teal, and I think it's one of the T-shirts that you made.
Oh, really? I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
The one with
I
the
have
guy
like
with
yeah, I have one, and it's Sam Kirk t-shirt.
the. That's funny. Yeah, teal for sure. I don't know. It makes me happy.
That is a quality
Um,
color.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments for Sam?
Cool. All right. Well, if no one has any more questions or comments, I want to say thank you so much, Sam. It's always a pleasure to see you. You know, we've got so much history and we've done so much great work together. So I'm glad that our team was able to get a little glimpse of Sam Kirk. So yeah, this has been really good, really informative. Happy to see all the new work that you're doing, and yeah, can't wait
Thank
to see
you.
what's next.
I mean, I think thank you, Lee. It's always good to see you guys and chat with you. I was really excited when Nancy sent this invitation. I was like, yeah, for sure, I'll chat with those guys. The only thing I'll say, especially since most of y'all are in advertising, is if you want artists, specifically artists of color, to succeed, as the middleman between the brand and the artist, you have to be on their side. So look out for them with the contracts. Make sure the work for hires are legit and they're maintaining their copyright, because a lot of artists, specifically artists of color, are not receiving that education. They don't have like big management teams representing them all the time. Some of us do, for sure, but there's a lot fewer of us than there are of the other. And we need to change the way the industry works for us. So I feel like we need our folks in advertising to also have our backs in that way as well.
Absolutely, and that's a big part of the work that most of us do, with reaching those Black and Brown communities, whether it's community engagement or some kind of installation. That's a big part of, I think, everybody on this call's work. Everybody I'm familiar with, so it's definitely a good reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, Sam. I have been sometimes very unpopular with our clients because I've been a very hardcore outspoken, because obviously as a creator of music and a producer myself, I understand that when people are trying to basically take your work, you know what I mean, like you can't allow that to happen. So yeah, I've had some unpopular moments with clients, but it's what we have to do. We have to stand up to make sure that artists are able to own their own work, which is, in any other industry, it's not even a thing. But
Right.
for some reason, for art and music, everyone wants to take the rights to the artist or the musician's works. And that's something that we always have to be, vigilant about, because they'll always try to slip it in a contract. So.
Yep, they sure do. They sure do. And they don't, pay the licensing fees that they should when they ask for extras. So that's something that I definitely apply and try to help other artists with as well. So happy to hear that. I mean, I'm not surprised. I know that you guys are doing that. When I was working with you more, happy to hear that it's continuing across the team. So
cool.
And well, thank you guys for your time. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the invitation. I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for being here, Sam. I also, if anybody's interested in keeping up with what Sam has going on, I dropped a shameless plug on her behalf in the chat. Her Instagram is at @IamSamKirk. Exactly how it sounds.
Thanks,
yeah,
Karen.
follow Sam Kirk. Always interesting stuff on her Instagram.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
everybody.
Have a good one.
Thank
you.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.